Alaikum, everyone, and welcome to Healing Conversations with Dr. Sheeba. I am a board certified psychiatrist, and today I'm welcoming a guest from Abu Dhabi. Her name is Kausar Tahir. She's a clinical pharmacist, and she is the CEO of an app called Me Now. And she's a very important guest because she sort of does a lot of community service. And she has gotten to know a lot of women in her community and researched certain topics that have come up with regards to women's health. In particular, she's explored the topic of menopause and perimenopause. And when she scoped out the situation and realized that a lot of women are going through certain changes, which they're having a hard time addressing amongst each other, amongst their family members, she took it upon herself really to come up with a solution. And she created an app. She used her technological advances to create this app, and then she launched it into this community. So I feel that this is something that I absolutely admire and respect, and I wanted her to share her expertise with everyone to inspire us all to really be able to assess the situation where we are, see what we're all experiencing, and problem solve with something that we can all use. And so I thought this was a great way to start the program. And with that, we will start the conversation with Kausar Tahir, again, clinical pharmacist from Abu Dhabi. Assalamu alaikum, Kausar.
Malika, how are you? Thank you for having
Good.
me.
Welcome. Welcome to, of course, it's such a pleasure to have you. I know we've been talking about this for a while and it's finally happening. So I'm so excited. So again, I made the intro of yourself as a clinical pharmacist based in Abu Dhabi, but Canadian actually, right? So let's talk about this new adventure and this new app that you started. Can you tell me a little bit about Me Now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we go back to the beginning, the app is created to support women in perimenopause and menopause. And really, it came about looking at, my social circle, people who I'm working with, all were kind of in the same midlife journey and struggling with perimenopause. And as a clinician, honestly, we didn't learn about perimenopause in school. I don't know if you had the same experience as I did, but we didn't learn the term perimenopause. So that transitional journey that can take, 4 to 5 years or even 8 to 10 years for women was completely not discussed. And now you have women who are struggling with symptoms and it's impacting them physically, mentally, and emotionally. So I decided to do something about it and create resources really for marginalized communities, for women of color who don't have menopause resources to support them.
Psychiatrist, I know that with a lot of women's health issues, especially in our South Asian community, it's not easy to talk about. Even to say the term menopause or perimenopause, people are shy or embarrassed, and they just don't want to have that discussion. So it's interesting that you made this observation in your community and then decided to actually take the initiative and do something. And that's kind of the concept behind my show is I want people to be able to have a sensibility of any issues that are concerning their mental health and then to actually come up with a solution and target a larger scope of people with that solution. So, I mean, as far as perimenopause and many menopause is concerned, I think you and I had that discussion that this is kind of a normal trajectory for women, right? It's a normal part of the reproductive cycle. Starts with menarche, the onset of a woman's period, and then menopause, which is the ending of a woman's period. And the period before menopause is called perimenopause. And it can be different for people, right? Like there's hormonal shifts and changes, and people different women based on their genetics and their medical history will experience different things. So, how did you kind of break that stigma and say, you know what, I'm going to be the one who's going to start to talk about this now?
I mean, I think we're working on breaking that stigma through the app. And I think the stigma doesn't even go like it doesn't just start at perimenopause. You actually alluded to it. It starts at your period. So if you let's look at the South Asian community. We don't talk about female reproductive health. And if you were to survey women, in their 40s or in their 50s and ask them, like, did your mom talk to you about getting your period? Did your mom talk to you about what periods meant? And a lot of women are going to say no, they didn't have that conversation. And I think that's where the stigma starts. And we have a sense of shame and shyness around the topic, and that carries with us. And that's actually quite dangerous because, as you know, and we're going to talk about it with the audience, perimenopause has increased health risks associated with it. So if you don't address it, you are actually at risk of other medical conditions like increased cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, dementia. So if you don't know what to ask and you don't know what's normal and what's abnormal, how are you going to go get help? So the stigma starts, I think, from the beginning, and we want to change that. We want people to feel comfortable speaking about female reproductive health. We want to normalize talking about periods. And I think
Sure,
as a side effect of that, we're going to normalize talking about the mental health um, challenges that somebody would
absolutely.
go through in perimenopause. So we're trying to normalize that conversation. So we have very easy to read articles on the app, all for free. And you can read them from the comfort of your own home. I think women, especially South Asian women, they're not comfortable yet having those conversations with family members or maybe their
Right.
friend group. So this way they can educate themselves in the comfort of their own home, in the privacy of their home. And we're going to use education to break that stigma.
Excellent. I don't know if you've heard this, but a lot of times growing up, when women were fasting at a younger age and they were in their parents' home and they have brothers, a lot of girls, even at the time when they were excused from fasting, would say that they still get up for suhoor and act as though they're fasting because they don't want the men in the family to know what part of their cycle they're going through, which is almost a sense of shame, maybe, that they don't want anyone to know what's going on. And again, it's interesting that we start with this topic, right? Because that is women's health. That is a normal thing that all women go through, really. And I'm sure their brothers and their spouses and their fathers and everybody knows about it, but it's such a private topic that it's something that, even to the extent that women will get up in the morning and fast or pretend as though they're fasting when they don't actually have to. So that's something I always thought about, that that's got to be really difficult for a girl with a lot of brothers, or that they have to actually get up in the morning and it's that part of their cycle and they don't have to, they don't want to address it. Now fast forward, as a woman, as a mother, as a friend, as a wife, you're going through different hormonal changes, and you feel, do you sometimes feel like, who do I talk to about these changes that I'm going through? So from my perspective as a psychiatrist, a lot of times the dysphoria, or when the mood changes or people feel a little bit down or the low, we can associate with that time, in a woman's cycle, that it could be the hormonal shift is making someone feel down or different. So, I mean, how did you think that, okay, you know what, education is the right way, right? And that we have to start a discussion. But the idea of an app, to mix the technology with the science and put it all together, what made you do that? Because I know you're really successful with this and it's taking off. So how did that come about? Let me make an app out of this.
I think digital health is the future. So I think women want an easy way to track their symptoms. Pen and paper isn't going to cut it anymore. We're unfortunately on our phones a lot, right? So we have apps for other parts of our life. Why not have an app that can help us navigate this phase of life? So I was accepted into a women's health accelerator that actually focused on femtech, so tech that is geared towards women's health. And I worked with subject matter experts. So wasn't just me, it was with other healthcare professionals to create something that was easy to use but clinically sound. And really, we're on our phones all the time, so why not give women a tool that they're able to track their symptoms in less than a minute, read if they need to read something related to anything and everything about perimenopause. We discuss everything. And then we also have a community feature where you can, advertise events, anything to do with midlife, either in person or virtually. So really giving women a tool in the palm of their hand to help them through this journey. And an app seemed like the logical um, form of putting this all together, considering we are moving in a digital age. So I didn't think, a book or a brochure would be enough, although those resources are great and they are out there. But I wanted to give women a tool they can use to track their symptoms, because if they don't track and understand what's happening, how are they going to, one, go get help? How are they going to advocate for themselves? And I want them to go to their doctor's appointments prepared. I want them to go with evidence, not feelings. So when you track your symptoms, when you're ready to go and you can generate a report, and it's going to print up a nice PDF of everything that you've been logging. And that's what's going to help you get a correct diagnosis and early intervention. And maybe you can speak to that a little bit. Yes, perimenopause is probably a likely scenario for women in midlife, but there are a lot of other hormonal conditions that have very similar symptom profiles, especially if you look at the mental health symptoms. So making sure that women are diagnosed correctly and then getting the correct help. So the app was the way to go.
That you came up with this technology, and that definitely is a tool to bring to your OBGYN when you want to address these symptoms. And you're right, it is completely a digital world for us now. And one of the things that I get concerned with as a psychiatrist is that there's a lot of misinformation. A lot of people think that they're getting medical advice from people who are not necessarily medical professionals, and they will take that advice very seriously and internalize it. And if it works for them, great. However, I do think it's important to do your research and have evidence based medicine backing you up when you're speaking to these topics. As far as mental health is concerned, you and I have talked about how it's so difficult to address mental health, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, whether it's OCD. And these are very common things in our community. And again, I respect the fact that you and myself and a lot of other women like ourselves are ready to talk about these topics worldwide. Like I'm in the United States, you're in Abu Dhabi, we're still talking about this topic. From my perspective, I would suggest if a woman feels like she's in that phase of her life, where she is approaching menopause, then she should definitely consult with her OBGYN and explore. And like I said, perhaps use the app so that they have more information about themselves. Now, with mental health, a lot of times in a panic attack, people can have palpitations, people can have a lot of sweating, they can have shortness of breath, and they can have symptoms that may feel like a hot flash, but it's actually a panic attack. So it's important to be able to differentiate the two. Also, with depression, people can have irritability, low mood, low energy, and that tends to be pervasive. It can be more than 2 weeks where people are experiencing the same low mood over and over again. And so, again, it's important to be able to differentiate, is this depression versus a physiological change that you're normally going through? But what I will say is that menopause is not, or perimenopause is not necessarily a diagnosis, or it's not necessarily an illness. It's just a part of the cycle that you may be experiencing at that time. And again, it's important to differentiate the two because there's so much overlap in the symptoms. And so that's why, again, having an app to be able to track, well, this is how I felt at this time of day. This is how I was feeling 4 days later. And to be able to bring that to your doctor and you have all the information and let them analyze that information. Take it to your OBGYN. If you feel that, okay, everything's smooth, take it to a psychiatrist if you need to. And again, that's another thing that I'm trying to destigmatize. It's not the end of the world to see a psychiatrist for something, because the same way you take care of your physical health, you have to take care of your mental health. And so, again, I appreciate that you are trying to create or a system for women to be able to navigate their feelings from their hormones, from their mood. And again, hormones are involved in everything we do, right? There's our brain is
Yes.
shooting out chemicals and we respond to those, right? But again, to be able to have the insight to know, well, this is the phase that I'm in my life, and I know to expect this, versus is this major depression? Is this generalized anxiety? Is this a panic attack? So, again, it's really important to be creative with that, as you have been, especially in the world of digital media. Being in Abu Dhabi, I mean, and presenting this, to the corporate world and saying, hey, let's do this. And I'm glad you have like a team of people to support you. Is it being well received at this time? Community?
I mean, definitely overwhelmingly positive support for sure. I think it's very interesting because I'm still, very much connected to the Canadian community. Um, a lot more open in talking about menopause, I think, in the West. Definitely talking about it here, but not as openly. So I think that's where the app comes in because it allows women to maybe not talk about it as openly if they're not comfortable, but they can access the resources. Something I wanted to go back to when you were talking about, the different mental health challenges, or is it depression or is it dropping estrogen? I mean, I think that's so important. And we did a focus group of over 300 women. And it was so interesting that women were complaining about their mood, the brain fog, their anxiety, so much more than they were complaining about their hot flashes. They were actually, I think one of the women said this was the most emotionally devastating part of her journey that she's ever been through. So I think we really need to put that focus on that mental health challenge that happens in perimenopause because we think hot flash, right? We think, gaining weight. We think things, but the mental health aspect of it is something that's really, really affecting women and the people they support around them. So it's not just affecting the woman in perimenopause, it's
Of
affecting,
course.
her spouse or her kids or her siblings or, people at work. So there's a profound community impact. So we did actually create a notes feature where you can use it however you want. But one of the goals was if you are feeling low, to use the notes to put context as to why you're feeling low. Like, did something happen that day? So that when they do go to a professional like yourself, you're able to then see, is it hormone related or is it a life stressor? Is it a combination of both? Because then that's really going to affect the next therapy pathway that you might take with this patient. So definitely making sure that we're supporting women with their mental health in this journey for sure.
Absolutely. And I always tell my patients, your thoughts will affect your feelings are going to affect your mood, but then your mood is going to affect your behavior. And then your behavior is going to affect your relationships with everybody around you. So just to feel a certain way, and then that's now affecting your mood. And of course, your kids, your family members, your coworkers, if once it starts to affect your behavior, it's going to start to affect your relationships and how you're interacting with other people. So it's important to have that insight and to bring the fact that, this is not a common subject that any of us have heard of before. My mother never spoke of this. My aunts or people that I grew up with, I had never heard any woman talk about this. I don't know if it was taboo, but I kind of think like, did they even go through these things? Because whatever it was, they just were not able to speak about it. So either they were going through it quietly or we were younger at that time. We just didn't know about it. But now I also feel that people are almost very expressive about these things, and so when you do speak of the subject, you have to be well informed, whether it's mental health related, whether it's reproductive cycle related. You have to know, what you're talking about, especially when you're giving advice. And when you say that you have the opportunity to take notes, journaling in itself is very therapeutic. I mean, that's something that we recommend to people when they're getting depressed, when they're getting anxious. Write down, was there a trigger? did something,
Hmm.
elicit or solicit that response at that time, right? So I always encourage people, write it down. Write down your thoughts, write down what happened. What time of day are you having a crying spell? What time of day are you feeling more fatigued? Are we noticing some patterns here? Is it when you're seeing your mother-in-law? Is it when you're with someone at work that you don't like? Are there other social factors that are involved in this? Which there is. So our mental health is affected by our genetics, our psychology or psychological factors, our upbringing, our culture, and then the social aspects are huge. So even just socializing with friends will affect your mental health. If you're hanging out with healthy people versus toxic people, it's all going to affect your mental health. So again, it's important to journal, and I really like that that feature exists in this app because it's almost like it incorporates a therapeutic mechanism for people to like jot things down. So I think that's really good. But having said that, what advice would you give to a young female who may be listening or watching and who's thinking, maybe someday I want to create an app or I want to create a solution for something that I'm experiencing? What advice would you give to them as an innovator?
Oh, that'd be great. I love people who innovate and think of solutions outside of the box. So I hope that this conversation inspires somebody else to do something. I would say it's a great way to give back to the community. If you see a gap in the community, if you're a healthcare professional and you see a gap in your practice, I would just say start. I mean, definitely do your due diligence, talk to people first. Don't build something in a silo. So I built this speaking to other women in mind and looking at their pain points and then taking that and building something alongside with healthcare professionals. So if you want to build something in the healthcare space, know your audience, survey your audience, have conversations with your audience. And then I would say tap into your healthcare network and get other people's ideas and advice and input into what you want to build. And then just start. Is it going to be perfect when you start? No. This took me a year to build, and there have been so many versions that came about before the version that is now available on Apple Store and Google Play. So there's been a lot of, pivots and edits and, a lot of eyes that have been on the app, and we've changed a lot of things and then we've kept a lot of things. So as long as you know that it's not going to be the perfect product the first time around, but you will get there. Just start, look at what your community needs and try to find what we call, people say product market fit. I want to say problem solution fit. What's the problem that you see and how does your solution address that problem?
Think that's really important, like you said, is to feel out what's going on in the community. And I will say that from the few interactions we've had, is that you are always open to community service and getting the community together to address such topics. And, personally enjoyed doing a talk in Abu Dhabi, which I thought was excellent. But just to be able to say, hey, let's all get together and have this conversation together, part
I
of this.
mean,
When you're
you were
doing
my
good
first,
to others, sorry?
yeah. No, no, no. I was going to
It,
say
it,
you were
it,
my first speaker for that community series, and I'm so glad you were open to doing it. So I would actually
it
say
was
to
my
somebody else
pleasure.
who is watching, if you want to do
Yeah,
something for the community, Allah finds ways. One, two, you connect with so many amazing people, and you don't know what door that's going to open. So if you have the right intentions, that you know what, I want to do something for the community. It doesn't have to be an app. It could be
yeah,
anything, right? But if you want to do a
right.
community project that's aimed for uplifting the community, I think doors will open and you're going to meet a lot of amazing people. So if you like to network, I would say that's something that you should do.
Absolutely. And I have to say that I think what you're doing over there is amazing. I think you had created a very nice, safe space for women to get together, listen to each other, and talk to each other, because that's another aspect of mental health is a lot of times we need to be able to speak to the right people and we need to be
Yes.
able to listen also to the right people, right? So listening requires a lot of technique. Sometimes you may be unloading your issues on someone who may not be in a position to handle or hear all of that. So I think to be able to create safe spaces and safe environments for women to be able to get together and have conversations and family dynamics and, just talk it out, it's always very therapeutic and beneficial. Having said that, I have to ask you, did you have family support? Was your husband, and your parents or your family members, were they supportive of this endeavor?
I mean,
I mean,
definitely
I,
my
I don't
husband
want to
was.
put you on
I
the spot.
mean,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no, no, not at all. I think I think for a long time I didn't share with people that I was building this because, you know, I don't know. I was going through a program. I was working with, an actual accelerator program. So I didn't want to say anything until I was actually, pitching in Dubai and the product was ready to come out. But don't no, definitely my husband's been very supportive. I mean, I've done clinical work for over 2 decades. I'm at a stage in my career where I don't want to work the 9 to 5. So doing things like this actually like energizes me. It's good for my mental health and keeps me busy because like I had the pleasure of working with you in Abu Dhabi for a mental health workshop. I love doing community stuff. And I also like patient education. So this app was like the perfect combination of the two. So for myself and for my mental health and keeping me busy and active, I think he was very supportive in that. My family, I told after I launched. Actually, they didn't really know I was building it until I launched it. And I think they're very proud of, having somebody in the family do something in a technical capacity. Come from a family of like engineers and teachers. So this wasn't something that was fitting the norm, but they're definitely excited.
Excited and they should be very proud. And I hope this inspires other clinicians and physicians that this can all be very therapeutic and beneficial to yourself and to others. And it does help physician and clinician burnout, to be able to do these sorts of activities and be innovative and use the creative part of your work to be able to give something back to the community. Again, it can prevent burnout. I'll be honest with you, I think that's a very similar way in which I try to prevent burnout is to be involved in community service and activities all the time. So, with that, I have to say thank you so much for your patience, for connecting with me from the other side of the world. And I hope this is the first of many, many conversations. And I really hope for the young ladies and ladies our age and everybody everywhere gets inspired by this. And I'm excited for your app. I'm excited for this project and hopefully, inshallah, many more to come.
Thank you so much for having me. And honestly, you've been a great inspiration as well because we talk so openly about mental health. Like it's really nice to talk to not only another clinician, but someone from the South Asian community who gets why this is so important. So thank you for always having open conversations with me and looking forward to more conversations for sure.
Of course, inshallah, inshallah. Thank you, Kausar Tahir, clinical pharmacist who has connected with us from Abu Dhabi, and she is the CEO and the founder of the Me Now app. And we will be sharing her information for her Instagram, her social media, so that you can openly connect with her. And I really hope that the listeners got something out of this conversation, just to kind of be protective of your mental health, to have a sensibility of when you're going through your changes in your life cycle and your reproductive cycle and who to talk to and where to get professional help from. You should be able to differentiate when you need to talk to your OBGYN, when you need to talk to your primary care, when you need to see a therapist or a psychiatrist. And of course, we're always here to help. And I hope the listeners enjoyed this conversation. Thank you all.